This is the Teenage Engineering OPXY, and today we're going to cover some of its pros and cons while I take you through my typical workflow with it. And by the end of this, you'll have a way better idea of what it can do and can't do, and whether or not you should spend, wait for it, you sitting down, $2,000 on it. All right, let's check it out. Now, Teenage did send this to me to check out, but making a video on it was my choice, so they have no idea I am about to roast the shit. So here's a dope track I made on this thing. Pretty sweet, right? Got a couple little variations in here. Little lead line. But this is besides the point, right? So let's start from scratch. I'm gonna go ahead and go into our project manager, start a new project here. Now, one of my main gripes with this thing is how the drum instruments or the drum kits work. So you have these 8 tracks, and in here you load up a drum kit, right, on 1 and 2. That's kind of how the default thing starts. But in each one, you have these 24 sounds, right? But the only independent parameters you have of these drums is volume, start point, end point, and pitch. The other 3 pages here, which is your amp envelope, your filter, as well as your modulation slot, these are all shared across the entire drum kit. So if I go to my kick here and I want to change, maybe give it a little bit of attack, it's going to add that to all the other sounds. And what's funny is I think that Teenage knows that this is a bummer because your new default project, which we just loaded, always starts with 2 drum kits. So you can start it on 1 and then on 2. And this is kind of like the default way I ended up working on this thing, because there are times where I do need to kind of like put a high pass filter on a lot of my percussion, and I want that to not high pass my kick drum. So you kind of end up using 2 different kits. Thankfully, it's pretty easy to just hold down a track and you can copy this kit and paste it onto the other kit and kind of go back and forth. But it's a bit of a bummer that all this stuff affects everything. Oh, and another thing, the OPXY is technically 16 tracks. You have 8 tracks for the internal instruments where you can pick their sounds and stuff, which we'll get to in a sec. But if I hit this button here, you have another 8 tracks, but these are more for controlling the internal effects as well as external stuff like your MIDI and whatnot here, or your punch-in effects where you can do some really cool stuff. More on that in a second. And before we lay down some drums, in case you're wondering where I got this dope hoodie, I sell them down below. It's getting cold outside, so holla at your boy. I got your size. All right, let's get some drums down. So really simple. You could do the typical, all right, let's just do a little step sequencer, right? Now, here's a tricky thing. It's really hard to tell where 1, 5, 9, and 13 is for me. But luckily, you could live record into this thing. So if I go to our bar settings, I'm going to turn our quantization to just 50. We want to leave a little bit of the human in there, right? Groove, we want a little bit of groove. Let's go for about 40. And shape is really dope. So shape is actually going to control the parameter lock shapes. So when you start doing parameter locks, whether it glides into that shape or it just does a hard punch in and punch out. So you can kind of dial this all to taste, and this is also per track. So if we go to track 2, you can see all that the settings changed there. So back on track 1, yeah, this is fine. I'll hit record and play. All right, and then that's fine. So on this track here, there's a little bit too much tail on it, right? If I hold down shift on this sample, I can choose the direction at which it plays, its panning, its volume, as well as the decay or its attack time. So it kind of works, right? Now, if I wanted to adjust the velocity of these, we're working in 1 track. So all of our sounds are being input onto these steps. I push step 1, it says, all right, you got this sound and this sound all here. How do I adjust this step's volume of that 1 sound, right? That's where things get a little tricky. So I have to hold this down, select this step, hold down shift, and now I can parameter lock just this 1 step. And of course, I need to have record on. You have to do a couple like Street Fighter combos to get there, and that's why there's a benefit of using 2 different drum rack tracks. So it takes a second to kind of think ahead. But luckily, this is velocity sensitive, so I end up just kind of recording it in and kind of enjoying the way that it sounds with its velocity sensitivity. And that's one of the pros about this thing, is that even though these are very tactile, they're like actually pretty sensitive. And of course you have control over its velocity sensitivity here in the keyboard, either soft or hard or off. All right, so now I want to add a little bit of a parameter lock to just the reverb send on just these claps. There's, in the filter page, if you hold down shift, you have your 2 send effects here, but I think an easier way to do this will be in the mixer page. So here we can see track 1. This is where you control the volume, or for example, your reverb send or delay sends here. So I think I can just hit record, hold down this step and turn this up. Yeah, I can. Okay, cool. That's fine. And then I want to do it for this step here too. And in case you're wondering if you can nudge notes, yes, you can. You just hold down a step and use the plus or minus to kind of pull things on and off. But honestly, I find that the groove setting is actually pretty good. And it goes really high up to 99, which can swing pretty hard, right? So I'm usually in like the 30 to 40 range. I think that's good for me. Now let's go to track 3, and this is gonna be our chord sounds. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit shift and track 3 to choose a new preset, which by the way, are really freaking good. I dig them a lot. I think the stock sounds sound great, but they do at times leave me wanting a bit more in the sound design department. Like the way it works is you have your instrument on a track, right? Here, I'll just show you. So we're here. Let's find a sound we like. We're gonna go to keys. Oh, how pretty is that? Yeah, so down. Okay, so what I was talking about, we'll select this one, right? If we go to track 4, this one in particular is a multi-sampled instrument. So across the keys, there's actually a multi-sampled instrument in here, which is really sick. This itself, if we go and listen to shift 1, you can see here multi-sample, and you can do multi-sampling yourself. It takes a second. Maybe they're gonna incorporate a way to make it a little faster later, but it's dope. But if we go to something like this one here, this on the first page of 4 is all the controls you get. And it's cool, it's enough, but I just wish you had a little more, because you have the typical stuff, right? You have your amp envelope, you have filter envelope, you have a filter, which of course you can choose what kind of filter you want. And then on track 4, or page 4, I should say, you have your mod source, which albeit is implemented really well, but you just have one mod destination, so you can't do anything really crazy. Yeah, once I'm in here, I'm like, oh man, I want to do an element, and I don't know, I want to take the microphone and do some weird stuff on the filter page and choose its, I don't know, the cutoff and make it go negative, and you can do some cool stuff, but you only have one of them. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and set this up to be 4 bars. And by the way, you can change your track scale in here, but I don't need any of that right now. We just need a simple 4-bar pattern. Here we are, there it is. We'll hit record and play, and let's get this in. So we're on bar 2, here we go. All right, that was fine. I forgot to take the quantization off. And if I want to adjust this velocity, we can do that volume thing, or we have these really dope like trig parameters or trig controls. I forget what the hell they're called. But what's dope is if I hit shift and this step, I can just choose its velocity, force to a random velocity, or I can choose a specific velocity. And there's a bunch of these, which I'm gonna get into when we do the bass line, which, you know what, we might as well go ahead and do now. So track 4, let's go ahead and choose a new bass. Sure, that sounds good. All right, let's go 4 bars. And actually, you know what? Just to show these, let me find out what the hell these are called. I keep forgetting their name. Step components. They're called step components. That's what these are. They are the components of a step that make them do something weird. So let's actually utilize those. So watch this. We're gonna just play this in. Okay, so kind of chaos going, right? Because we have this set to random. I'll set it to up for now so we can just really hear what's happening. On our first step, I'm gonna go up an octave and place a G. And I'm gonna say hold it down. Now, I can hold down Shift, press this, and choose, for example, this, which will say ramp up 5 steps for 1 octave. How tight is that? If I hit Shift and say this one, which is one of my favorites here, bend, it's gonna go wow. And I can choose how it gets there. Bend shape up and then down, bump down. I love stuff like that. Okay, so here, look, you could do some really wild stuff with the step components, but what I didn't originally realize was how wild these can actually go in towards affecting the actual sequence length. Because remember, we have our choices of choosing our track scale and all this other stuff, but you don't necessarily need to even stick to those. Within just 1 bar, we can start doing some really weird stuff. So let's just do something weird and let's see if we can get it kind of cool, right? Something decent. So press play, hit record and play, go down an octave. I know I'm just playing a G minor, so we'll just play these notes that also share that D at the same time. Do not like this last note, this here. Now with the step components, I'll say on the first one, let's do up a 5th. Or we can say chromatic down. Actually, you know, I like the 5th up, but then we're gonna skip it every second. And then same with this one, we're gonna say, you know what, let's go ramp 1 octave every 5 steps. And then on this one here, we'll do hold step 4 times. Now it's holding that step for 4 steps, which is actually pretty sick. And then here, I'm gonna go up, Now, jumping way too far ahead, I want to jump to track 8 because this is actually really sick. This is like this auto transposer, so we can transpose down. Oh. And we're back. I just love messing with this. And what's crazy is that you can actually record this into the step sequence. We'll get to that in a sec. I'm getting way too lost in the sauce right now. Where was I? Now, I'm a sucker for onboard microphones. Yes, this has one here. If I choose a new sound, for example here, I can just hit record. And now you can hear me. I'm gonna go ahead and lower our threshold. Okay, we need to be quiet. I need to push this button softly because a lot of times it jumps through. Yeah. 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 All right, close enough. I kind of breathed a little air on there, but it's fine. Our start point, click into zoom. Yeah. And again, I wish I can send just this sound to the delay or the reverb because, you know, I like to do my little yeah. But I can't. It's fine. But we could parameter lock it. Yeah. That's cool. Yeah. But shift here, skip every 2, and then I also want to force its velocity. And then again, parameter lock this, right? So I'm gonna go to our mixer. It's a little easier. We're on step page 2 here. I can hold down record, hold down this step, and then just send it to the reverb or delay. All right, let's add one more melodic thing because this is really gonna help show off the other tracks 9 through 16, which are all the effects and whatnot. We touched on it a bit with the little scale transposer thing, but let me just do this real fast. So on track 5, sure, that sounds great. So this is gonna be our little swarm. Some amplitude modulation. While this is playing, we can just go ahead and jump through some other sounds here. That's actually kind of cool too. And look, this is a new one, right? So we're gonna go ahead and I'm gonna set this to be a high pass. And I'm gonna choose our high pass to be really high up. Okay, now let's take a look at tracks 9 through 16. Again, these you cannot use like the instrument tracks. These are specifically for external stuff and internal effects. The easy way to tell them apart is once you're here, just look at that little character next to the two. So you got your punch in, you got your MIDI, CV, your ins and outs, and then this really dope tape thing, and then your two effects where, of course, we have our delay, or we can choose from a couple other effects, or we have our reverb, and again, you can choose from a couple other effects. Starting with this little tape thing, this is just like a little tape repeat. What's dope about this is it's constantly redoing the buffer, and you can actually choose how many steps it's actually gonna hold. And again, you can sequence all this. Or if you just hit up and down an octave, it'll pitch it up for you. Or down. And it actually sounds really good. Personally, I like keeping it on 1 and then just playing the octave. And what I'm playing here, I'm not necessarily changing the pitch in semitones. It will change in octaves, but this is choosing where across the sample to start grabbing. And once you have it, I mean, leave it up to Tinez to make the really fun, like punch and effect stuff, right? It's on the EP 133, it's on the 1320, it's on their pocket operators. It's dope. And this isn't even the punch and effects. This is just this weird tape looper thing. The other ones I'm gonna skip over because I got nothing else plugged into it, but you get the idea. You could do some MIDI stuff. Cool. Now, punch and effects. These are sick. So, I kind of figured this out. I'm guessing this is how it is. On this right side of the keyboard, you have more percussion stuff. So it'll know when you have like drum racks and stuff loaded. And then these on the right are for the melodic and tonal stuff. What's funny is they're kind of similar when you match them up with keys, right? So here, I'm pressing what, a B, I'm pressing a B over here. If we go to B flat. Or we press D. And I know for a fact, I haven't tested this out, but I'm pretty sure this sends out MIDI because I learned that the amazing way in that last video. This one here, in case you're curious. What's tight about this is a lot of times I'll find a punch-in effect that I really like. That's cool. So I just want this here and to be held for that many steps. And maybe even longer. A little less. So say I like this, right? We'll go to shift here. If I hit shift and play, I can copy the first bar over onto the 4 other bars. So boom, boom, boom. Now I'm gonna play some melodic stuff in, but record it in instead. So watch. And again, you can start doing some really weird stuff where you say on this step, jump to this step instead, but only do that 1 out of every 3 times. And then just have it start tripping out on you, right? Which is crazy. And now we can even do this. Watch this. Right here, I'm gonna go to track scale and we're gonna leave it to 1 bar, but I'm gonna choose our track scale of 4, meaning it's moving this slow. Actually, let's go even slower. So we're gonna go to a track scale of 8. Taking it back to the beginning. I liked it, staying there. And then here, I want it to just flip to D, and then we're gonna flip to C here for 2, and then go to lower G for the rest, and then stick to G here. Where art thou? Now let's really pump this up. In our mixer page, we'll go to 4. We have our compressor here. Push the percussion in there. Now go to our EQ. This one's really dope. You got your bass, which is just way too intense. Some mids and then your highs. And then of course you got some distortion stuff. If you wanted to take it there. Right, maybe do a little bit of some really nasty, but then just mix it in. So this is none. All right, let's go to track 6. I'm gonna go ahead and scramble this up. Actually, you know what? I don't like this one at all. We'll go into a plucky sound, and we'll choose guitar. So our effects, we'll go to reverb, and then go into our arpeggiato, and make this up a little higher. Wowza. Oh, you know what? Let's do this instead. I want to go to our modulator here, and we will use a value, and we're going to go with a sawtooth, and we'll go over to our envelope, and then we'll choose our release time. Turn this up. So it's going to increase our envelope. Actually, you know what? We want it to decrease. They weirdly did the backwards thing on us here. So now, if we look at this, when you turn down your release, it makes it really long. When you turn it up, it makes it really short. So here. Yes, please. Breakdown. Yo, this is kind of sick. But again, getting lost in the sauce. Again, with these things being able to be sequenced, you can actually go in and sequence the punch-in effects as part of your song by building up different scenes, copying these to different sections. You chain them all up and then you press play and it just does the damn thing, right? Okay, so before I get too carried away, after all this messing around, I still found myself asking, where does the OPXY really shine? Like, what is the X factor in it that says, you know, I need to get the OPXY because of X, Y, and Z, right? Well, I kind of boiled it down to its exploratory nature. And when you start sequencing the punch-in effects and sequencing all the other effects and using the, not step conditions, the step components along the bottom, which are super fun. And also, whatever the hell this is, look at this. I have no idea what this means. You just hit shift and a keypad, and it just does stuff. Again, no clue what it does. I really can't wait to get the manual for this thing so I can fully dive into it and find all the really dope hidden features within it. But it is still really unique and really fun. And of course, some other honorable mentions about this thing while using it before even knowing the price. It did feel expensive, which is cool. It's mainly comes down to, like, you know, the way the pages react and little things that it does, like this eye blinking once in a while, or the way the knobs kind of move and react and it feels and shifts around. And I don't know, it just feels like a really nice device. And then you pair that with the user interface and it's just super fun to use. And on top of that, it's really nice to look at, which to some folks, myself included, can have an effect on whether or not I pick something up to use it or not. Also, I can say that I've made stuff on here that would be a lot more difficult or near impossible for me to make on other devices because of those other unique features that I mentioned a second ago. For example, this whole chord changing thing, I don't even know what the hell it's doing, and I don't know music theory or the keyboard enough to be like, oh, cool, let me pattern this out on another device and then transpose it and then transpose it again and then again, but for 8 bars, and then have a pattern where it just goes back, and then doing the whole jumping from this step to that step, but only every other time, right? It starts like, again, the combination of all these along with those punch-in effects is where this thing starts to get really unique. But outside of those things, it's just an 8-track groove box with a built-in battery, speaker, microphone, and a whole world of potential upgrades and updates, but those aren't for you to decide on, right? But what is your decision is if you think it's worth it or not. And I'm really curious to hear what you think. So let me know down below. Speak then. And until next week, my friend, you already know the drill. Share the love, share the knowledge. Knowledge is power. Peace.
Yeah.